Coming up on this week's edition of the Kev BKA Beloved Show, we got the biggest question for every NFL team this offseason and a reaction to the KC Super Bowl parade shooting. But first, my theme music. All right, welcome in, everybody. Do not forget to subscribe, like, follow, tell a friend to tell a friend. Follow on all the socials at BKA Beloved, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Black Planet, MySpace. I'm completely kidding. Rate, review, subscribe. Y'all know the vibes, all the good things. Just because the season is over doesn't mean we're going to stop with the football content. As I'm sure most of you know by now, the NFL is a year-long league, and there's so much we got to cover. Starting with this offseason, the question that every single team across the board, all 32, well, except one, should be looking to answer is, how the hell do we stop the Chiefs? How do we stop this? The Kansas City Chiefs just went back-to-back on what were supposed to be down years. They traded away Tyreek Hill, who's their best offensive player, outside of Patrick Mahomes. Oh, well, they're going to have to make up for it. Their offense is going to be down. Patrick Mahomes wins MVP, they win the Super Bowl. The next year, the offense is sputtering. They look bad this year. They win the Super Bowl again. Every team has to be figuring out, what do we do about Kansas City? So every question is somewhat painted in that aspect of, okay, where do we go from here? How do we beat Kansas City so we make sure they don't three-peat? Obviously, the one team who doesn't have that question is the Kansas City Chiefs. Here's the question for them, though. Where did the Patriots go wrong? The New England Patriots won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, the same way the Kansas City just won 3 Super Bowls in 5. They then proceeded to not win another one for 10 years. Now, don't get me wrong. If this Kansas City run ends up just being 3 rings for Patrick Mahomes' entire career, hey, that is still a great run. Patrick Mahomes will still firmly be in the Hall of Fame, will be on quarterback Mount Rushmore, and hell, depending on the stats, might still end up being the GOAT. I disagree, but hey, he might still end up getting there. But I'm assuming with the way they're that ambitious, they're going to try and eclipse that dynasty, and waiting another 10 years to win another ring is not part of it. They're not shy about already saying they want to three-peat. Lucky for them, on Apple TV right now, there is a documentary about the Patriots dynasty, and Brett Veach, Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelce, everyone in the building should be having that series on repeat, watching it over and over and over to see what went wrong and how do we avoid it. This is not an ad. It should have been, because I reached out to Apple to try to get them to sponsor this podcast. Did not get a response. All good, Apple. We'll work together in the future. But for now, that's what they should focus on. How do we not be the Patriots and wait another 10 years to win ring number 4? Next up, we got the Denver Broncos. We're going to go division by division. The Denver Broncos, your number one question this offseason is, who's our quarterback? Because I don't care what Sean Payton was saying on Super Bowl Radio Row, Russell Wilson is out of there. They can't cut him because it's an $85 million cap hit. And clearly they're not going to start him, and they're not going to pay him $35 million to sit on the bench. That is not a tenable situation. Jarrett Stidham fucking stinks, as I've covered before on this podcast. And they don't really have the draft capital to trade up to get a quarterback. They are at pick number 12, if I remember correctly. So maybe they'll be able to sit in space and get a Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix or somebody at that spot. But who knows? There's going to be 3 quarterbacks in the first 3 picks. So if someone really likes QB4, they're going to move up. So that begs the question, who are they going to end up bringing in there? Las Vegas Raiders? Same thing. Who's going to be our quarterback? Antonio Pierce, Coach Antonio Pierce. I got to start putting respect on these former players I watched growing up who are now coaches. Coach Antonio Pierce was on the Pivot podcast with Ryan Clark, Shannon Crowder, and Fred Taylor. One of my favorites. Shout out to them. And all but said, yeah, we're going to trade for a quarterback. Antonio Pierce used to coach at Arizona State, where Jaden McDaniels went before he went to LSU. We'll get to the Patriots later, but I don't know. Just something to think about. Just something to think about. And last in the AFC West, the Los Angeles Chargers. Biggest question for them is, all right, Jim, show us what you got. This is a different reclamation project than the 49ers were. The 49ers were a dumpster fire before Jim Harbaugh got there. Alex Smith was a bust. They were running through coaches. Mike Nolan was out of there. Mike Singletary was out of there. It was a bad situation in San Francisco. Jim Harbaugh got that cleaned up in a year. The Chargers had a bad season. They've not been having a bad run. Outside of that inexplicable loss to the Jaguars in that playoff loss, that season before this one was pretty damn good. He's not here to save Justin Herbert's career. As much as I have my critiques of Justin Herbert's a damn good quarterback. You're not here to save him. You're here to make him a superstar. Different position. You know what I mean? And with the Jim Harbaugh brand of football, making quarterbacks superstars is not really what he does. Talked about J.J. McCarthy earlier. The reason why more people aren't higher on J.J. McCarthy is because these skills they keep telling us he has, he didn't display them on film because Jim Harbaugh didn't let him. That's not the offense they ran. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they got all these aging stars and all this big contracts and they're in cap hell. And a lot of those stars would be perfect Jim Harbaugh guys. But if they got to go out the door, what is Jim Harbaugh going to be able to do with those backups? Or whoever they end up bringing in. So that's their main question. What is Jim Harbaugh going to be able to do with the ceiling of the Chargers? All right, on to the AFC East. The Buffalo Bills. I know this is like the number one of the how do we beat the Chiefs question on their mind, but that's too easy. So the Buffalo Bills, the biggest question they got to answer this offseason is, who's Josh Allen going to throw to? Stephon Diggs had 1 foot out the door the entire season. Gabe Davis' contract is up. Dalton Kincaid's a rookie. Dawson Knox looks like he's on the back end of his career, dealing with injuries. Hands aren't what they used to be. Looks like he lost not a whole step, maybe a fourth of a step. You have one of the 3 to 5 best quarterbacks in football, and I know you just watched Patrick Mahomes do the whole I don't have a number one receiver thing. You are not Patrick Mahomes. You will not be so lucky. So they got to figure something out. Next, we got the Miami Dolphins. The number one biggest question for the Miami Dolphins this offseason is, how do we elevate Tua? Whether me and the person listening to this podcast thinks that Tua is the guy, he's their guy. They're going to have to extend him. They're not going to find better than Tua anywhere right now. So they're going to have to give him the contract. So since he is their guy, they're going to have to find a way to make it to a Super Bowl with him being their guy in the deepest conference in football. So what does that look like? Because although Tua was able to put up all those large numbers this year, I think he led the league in passing yards, we know he's limited in a sense, as that cold weather game in Kansas City showed. If they're in that position again, what's the counterpunch going to be? That's going to be the question they have to answer this offseason. Or even better, how do you make sure you get home field advantage through the playoffs? How you make sure you win 13 or 14 games during the regular season so you don't have to leave Miami? Should I do the Patriots next, or should I save them? Yeah, I'll do my Patriots now. The New England Patriots, how do we fix this offense? This is a multifaceted question. Guys, I'm a Patriots fan, so this one hits near and dear to me. If we draft a quarterback, are we setting him up to fail? When I first heard that the Patriots wanted to trade the number 3 pick, at first I got upset, but then I thought about it. I said, this might be for the best. Because I think about Justin Fields on the Bears, and I'm like, didn't go well when it didn't surround him with talent. I think about what Mac Jones has been through these past 2 years. Didn't go well when they didn't surround him with enough talent. So whoever that number 3 pick would end up being, Drake May or Jaden Daniels, regardless of how good they are, if we aren't able to build the supporting cast around them, would we be better off signing a Ryan Tannehill, signing a, who else is out there? Trying to get a Baker Mayfield if he doesn't want that big money. I heard Geno might be available for trade. That's my pick number 1. If Geno's available, go get Geno. Trading for Geno and then stacking receivers around him, trading that number 3 pick back. The counterpoint to that is Drake May or Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels, whoever ends up available at 3, are they good enough to the point where it's like, fuck it, we got to draft them because we're not going to end up being this high ever again, because that's the goal, to not be picking at 3 ever again? And we'll figure out the rest later, but we have to have this guy. He's a superstar. But I tend to lean more on the side of, if we cannot properly develop a rookie, considering we just failed in doing so, maybe we're better off trading back, trying to build as much talent on offense as we can, and signing a retread quarterback, bridge quarterback in the meantime, in between time. I don't know. Is Tyrod Taylor available? Maybe he's re-signed with the Giants so we can grab him for like a 6th round pick. I don't know. Somebody. Last in the AFC East, the New York Jets, number 1 question for them is, how do we protect Aaron Rodgers / what is our backup plan if we can't? Now, Jets fans, I hope you learned your lesson about pinning all your hopes and dreams on the 40-year-old quarterback behind a bad offensive line. Now, I know we all ignored the glaring issues that were in front of them because, oh my God, they got Aaron Rodgers. Fair. We all did it. But my main issue all last year was, why was there no backup plan and why was Zach Wilson still on the roster? How was the plan? All right, we're going to bring Aaron Rodgers in for a couple years and then we're going to start Zach Wilson again. That was a bad plan to begin with. Even if Aaron Rodgers would have played all 17 games last year, that's a terrible plan. So now we have to ask the question, what are we going to do if Aaron gets hurt again? Which I don't know how the speed bridge experimental surgery worked. He's, to my knowledge, going to be the first NFL player to be out there playing with it. So we'll see how it goes. Again, he's 40. So their priority really has to be, all right, maybe we should protect our 40-year-old quarterback with a surgically repaired leg. Might be a good idea. Might want to get him another receiver that isn't Garrett Wilson or one of his drinking buddies. Might also be a good idea. And if all else fails, do you sign another young guy that might be available? Dare I say, do you draft a quarterback in like the 3rd or 4th round just in case? Although I have to say, even if you fully believe in Aaron Rodgers, I still think if you're the Jets, you have to draft the quarterback this year. Like I think it's malpractice if you don't. That's crazy. But it's also the Jets, so who knows? Now for the AFC North, we have the Baltimore Ravens. The biggest question for them this offseason is, what's the next step for this offense? Although Lamar Jackson's numbers did not reflect it, we've covered this ad nauseum. He was a markedly better player, a markedly better quarterback this year because the offense was more improved around him, weapons and schematically. So how do we now pair that with the numbers from his first MVP season? How do we get production plus efficiency in the same player and in the same system? Especially since it's looking like that defense is going to be missing a lot of pieces come next year. Like, if that defense takes a step back and they're going to have to win a couple shootouts, they're going to have to do a lot more on offense to carry that load. So what is the next step? What's version 2.0 of the Todd Monken Lamar Jackson offense? Next up, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. How do we keep Joe Burrow healthy? In the 2 seasons that Joe Burrow was able to finish the season, the Cincinnati Bengals won the AFC Championship and lost in the AFC Championship. So as far as they know, protect Joe Burrow, we are either in the Super Bowl or a game away. They have made attempts, in their defense, they've made attempts to sign and trade for offensive linemen in order to protect Joe Burrow. It just has not worked out yet. I'm not going to rehash the whole Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase thing. Bengals fans get very upset when you do, although in my opinion, the choice was obvious. Even if, I know T. Higgins is like the headline there, but even if T. Higgins leaves, even if Tyler Boyd retires, even if Jamar Chase wants to break the bank, that's fine. We got to keep Joe Burrow healthy. Cleveland Browns, the biggest question for them this offseason, how do we get the best out of Deshaun Watson? They just made a playoff run with Joe Flacco. The last time we saw Deshaun Watson on the field was that comeback against the Ravens where the numbers will look better than the film was because if you remember correctly, it was a lot of checkdowns. It was a lot of dink and dunks. And as we found out later, he played those last couple games on a shoulder that needed surgery. So is the answer he got his surgery, he's fine now, we don't got to worry about this no more, he has his arm strength back, we're good? Is it, all right, he has less arm strength than he used to, so we have to run our offense differently? Because the scenario of Deshaun Watson is not the starting quarterback of the Browns, that's just not a thing. Too much guaranteed money, too much investment. He's going to be the starter for the Browns as long as he's healthy. I'm not worried about Nick Chubb coming back from injury. I know that's the other part of it. Nick Chubb will be fine. He's a superhuman. I'm sure he'll be fine and right back ready by game 1. Pittsburgh Steelers, your biggest question, are we ready to be fucking for real at quarterback? Kenny Pickett's not the answer. I'm tired of y'all pretending that he is. He isn't. What more do you need to see? You benched him for the person you drafted him to replace in Mason Rudolph. The person who should be the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers next year is not on that roster. Regardless of who you think it should be, is not on the roster right now. And it seems like everyone knows it, but the Steelers. All right, AFC South time. The Houston Texans, their biggest question, how do we become a Super Bowl contender? I know that seems like a lot, but follow me. On a prior podcast, I said that a Super Bowl window is a myth. I misspoke a little bit, so let me try to clarify. The thought that Super Bowl windows are long is a myth. Take the Legion of Boom Seahawks, for example, right? They went to 2 Super Bowls back-to-back. The first one, Russell Wilson was like, what, 21, 22? Young guy. It was like his second year in the league. You're thinking, shit, we got a young defense on the other side of the ball. We got a quarterback who can carry it and is only going to get better. Oh, my God, the ceiling's unlimited. How many Super Bowls can we win? The next year, the Malcolm Butler play happens. That team was never the same again. It all exploded. I say that to say the Houston Texans overachieved this year. CJ Stroud has proven that he is already one of the 5 to 10 best quarterbacks in football. As a rookie, he's only going to get better. That defense that DeMeco Ryans had on the other side of the ball played their ass off, but they're still lacking in talent in certain spots. Now, some of it is just youth, like David Harris, Will Anderson, and Derek Stingley. They're all going to improve as players for next year, so that's part of it. But other things you're going to have to add. As good as Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Dalton Schultz is, do you make a reach for a T. Higgins or Mike Evans to try to improve at the receiver spot, give CJ one more target? Do you try to upgrade at running back? Because they had no running game at all last year. It was actually jarring that they were able to win so much without being able to run the football in the fucking slightest. It was weird. But the AFC is deep, man. If you find yourself trying to wait and be like, all right, it's just not our turn yet, you might be waiting for a decade. You got to strike right now if you're trying to compete. Biggest question for the Indianapolis Colts this offseason: how do we surround Anthony Richardson with enough talent? Michael Pittman wants a new contract. Jonathan Taylor just got re-signed. You were a game away for the playoffs with Gardner Minshew. Clearly, Shane Steichen can coach. There's no reason why the Colts shouldn't be competitive next year outside of Anthony Richardson just don't got enough around him to get the job done. I have faith in his talent. I hope he learned by now that, hey, you got to protect yourself a little bit in the NFL, man. Trevor Lawrence tried to tell him week 1. It didn't work out, but hopefully he's learned by now. All right, Jacksonville Jaguars, biggest question: what's next after playing Trevor Lawrence? The original question was, is he worth all the money? That's not the question, because of course they're going to pay him all the money. Okay, now that we paid him, now what? What do we do now? Calvin Ridley more than likely is going to walk this offseason. Travis Etienne at some point is going to want a new deal. The defense was already lacking last year. It was bottom 5 in passing and allowed passing yards in the AFC, where all the good quarterbacks are. Josh Allen wants a new contract. It's a lot going on that they're going to need to build around Trevor Lawrence, and they also have to pay Trevor Lawrence. So that's one of those things that we're going to have to figure out. The Tennessee Titans, their biggest question is, how do we start this rebuild? So clearly they're rebuilding. You bring in Callahan Jr., you're letting Derrick Henry walk for reasons that are still unclear. Will Levis is coming back in. The offensive line still needs repairing. The defense is. So my question is, if you're the Titans, what's step 1? What's the thing you need to come out this offseason with? Your first offseason planning meeting, what's the headline? Is it give Will Levis people to throw to? Is it protect Will Levis? Is it give him a defense so he doesn't have to go out there and score 30 every week? What is it? Obviously, the goal is all the above, but let's be realistic. No one accomplishes all the above. So what's the main number 1 thing? Moving on over to the NFC, we're going to start with the NFC East and the headline makers that are always the headline makers, the Dallas Cowboys. Biggest question for the Dallas Cowboys: what does all in mean? Direct quote from Jerry Jones at the Senior Bowl when asked about going into the offseason. He said, and I quote, "It'll be going all in on different people that you've done in the past. We'll be going all in, ellipses. I would say that you'll see us this coming year not building for the future the best way I know how to say it. That ought to answer a lot of questions." No, Jerry, it doesn't. What the fuck does that mean? What does that mean? Since that statement, they've signed Mike Zimmer to be the defense coordinator, which low-key, huge move. I know that's not glitzy, glamorous, but by like week 5, we're going to realize how big of a move that was when that Dallas defense leads the league in sacks. Because, oh my God, that's going to be a fun one. So watch Michael Parsons in that type of system, and DeMarcus Lawrence. Hopefully he doesn't take a step back, because he is getting up there in age. Trayvon Diggs coming back into the fold, the amount of pressure they're going to create, he's going to be able to jump off some turnovers. That's going to be fun. But offensively, what does that mean? Especially since again, I don't talk about people's families on here, but I kind of have to in this context. Everyone on the Cowboys, family members talking about Dak Prescott. Dak's brother talking about he's been trying to convince Dak to leave Dallas, and Dak says he loves it there, and Dak's gonna sign for $1 gajillion this offseason because he has to. So that Jerry quote that he said ought to answer a lot of questions. No, Jerry, it left us with a whole lot more. What does all in mean? None of us know what that means, but it's provocative. New York Giants, the biggest question for the New York Giants this offseason, how do we protect Daniel Jones? Figuratively and literally. The New York Giants played with 3 different quarterbacks last year because they couldn't protect a damn one of them. The opening night of the season, Daniel Jones got sacked 6 times. Against the Seattle Seahawks, he got sacked 10 times. They beat the dog shit out Daniel Jones last year, and then they proceeded to beat the dog shit out the other 2 Giants quarterbacks last year. Bolstering that offensive line is priority numero uno for them in this offseason. And apparently, they're going to do the whole we don't want to pay Saquon Barkley thing for the 2nd year in a row for reasons that are still unclear. The whole running back value conversation gives me an aneurysm. It's just pay your best player. I don't know why that's so damn hard. But it's kind of similar to the Tua and Dak Prescott situation where whether we think Daniel Jones is the guy or not, he's their guy. They paid him. They're committed to him financially. He will be the starter next year. With that being the case, how do we make sure he's as successful as possible, whether we think he's good or not? Philadelphia Eagles' biggest question they got to answer this offseason, was it the coaching or was it the personnel? They have fired essentially their whole coaching staff, not named Nick Sirianni. Now, while I didn't want to see Nick Sirianni get fired, the visual of that firing of the whole coaching staff was, okay, it was everybody but Nick's fault, which, not a great visual. Which then leads me to say, okay, so what personnel changes are you going to make? Because if you roll the same team out there next year, then you're definitely saying it was just the coach's fault and not Nick's. And then on the offensive side of the ball, Nick Sirianni's supposed to be the offensive guy, and shout out to him. He took a lot of heat off of Brian Johnson, where he said, it's not Brian's fault. Brian's running my system. This is all my plays. Good on you, but the offense still was stagnant last year towards the end of the year, and everyone seemed to have you figured out. The defense and their struggles has been covered ad nauseum. As much as I would love to sit here and shit on Matt Patricia, you don't have to motivate me to shit on Matt Patricia as a Patriots fan. I'll do it gladly, but it wasn't just him. There's a lot going on over there. A lot of players are getting older. Fletcher Cox, Hassan Reddick, Darius Slay are just getting older as players. Jason Kelce won't commit as to whether he's retiring or not, and that's not me complaining. He's a Hall of Famer. If he doesn't want to retire or commit to an answer in fucking February, he shouldn't have to. But, be pretty useful if the Eagles knew whether he's retiring or not in, the next 2 months, Jason. Not rushing you, but, just saying. Washington Commanders, the biggest question for them this upcoming offseason is, how do we make sure our rookie quarterback doesn't get beat up like Sam Howell did? So they're not even hiding the fact they're drafting a quarterback. They're not hiding the fact that they want to draft Caleb Williams. I do not think that the Bears are going to end up trading back unless they trade literally everything but the Washington Monument to end up getting that number 1 pick. But I just don't think that they're going to end up either A, offering something that the Bears are going to want to accept, or B, acquiescing to the Bears' demands and saying, okay, it's worth it to trade for this one player. As great as I think Caleb Williams is, at a certain point, you got to look yourself in the mirror and be like, okay, this is still just one player. But Sam Howell was the most sacked quarterback in football last year, and a lot of that was on him because he holds the ball fucking forever. But all 3 of the top 3 quarterbacks in this draft have that same problem. So how do we make sure that doesn't happen again? You have the most cap space in football. Adam Peters is a brand new GM coming from the 49ers, and to their credit, all the 49ers stars, with the exception of Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey, are all homegrown. So drafting, they do that pretty well over there. Free agent signings, they do pretty well over there. So I think he'll be fine in that aspect. And with draft picks, the bar is in hell. NFL.com listed the rankings of last year's draft classes. The Washington Commanders were graded a D+ and were second to last at 31st. I can't remember who was dead last. So, yeah, as long as Adam Peters can do better than that, He'll be fine. The bar is in hell right now for him. All right, next we're going to move on to the NFC North, to the aforementioned Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears' biggest question they got to answer this offseason: how do we not fail Caleb Williams like we did Justin Fields? I know that the Caleb Williams or Justin Fields thing is just going to be used to fill airtime because it's a long NFL offseason and these shows have to do something while they're on TV, but I don't think it's a question. My question when I was doing it earlier was less about comparing those two as players, and it was more about the Bears as an organization. It's more of, do you have the structure in place to not fuck this up like you have fucked up every other quarterback you have drafted in the history of your franchise since Sid Luckman? After a while, it's not the quarterbacks, it's you. We're talking half a century of messed up quarterback development in one franchise. As good as Caleb is, how do we make sure that he's not the next one? As much as I really hope Caleb Williams pulls a John Elway, outside of the media hellstorm is going to bring down on him, I just don't think that's going to happen. So in the event that he does end up to the Chicago Bears, the very likely event, how do you not fail him like you did Justin Fields? The Detroit Lions, the biggest question they need to ask themselves in the offseason is, how do we win the Super Bowl? The Detroit Lions were in position to make the Super Bowl, but I bet you, if you ask anybody in the Detroit Lions organization after the Super Bowl, hey, be honest with me right now, y'all would have beat the Chiefs, wouldn't you? I guarantee you, to a man, everybody would say yes. Everybody. Not even off no, yeah, we confident in our team. Like, no, they'd give you like detailed reasons as to why. Some of those not aggressive decisions that Kyle Shanahan made, if it's one thing that Dan Campbell does not lack, it is aggression. So in their mind, they should have been a team in the Super Bowl. So the next step, logically, is to win it. Ben Johnson's coming back. They have, what's it, 32, 40 million in cap space, somewhere in that range. They know where they have to upgrade. They got to upgrade from pass rushers and some DBs. They're looking to re-sign Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jared Goff to bigger deals. Hey, Mazel Tov. Always love seeing players get paid, but let's not miss the plot here and forget where you got to improve as a team. The main goal is to go win a Super Bowl. The biggest question for the Green Bay Packers is, how do we take the leap? Again, a very vague question, but it's very similar to the Houston Texans, where it's, all right, we have a quarterback we know he can compete in this conference. It's just a much weaker conference than the AFC as far as quarterbacks are concerned. You just watched Jordan Love outplay Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy in back-to-back weeks, and he outplayed Jared Goff in the Thanksgiving game during the regular season. So the three quarterbacks he would have had to play on the way to the Super Bowl this year, he's already showed he can outplay all of them. What do we have to do around him to make sure that we can make the leap from spry, young, exciting team to Super Bowl participant or champion? The obvious answer is improve the defense. They got Joe Barry out of there, so that should automatically be like a 1,000-point EXP booster. They have the young receiver core that are going to get better by the year, but do they bring in a veteran to lead the way? I.e. Mike Evans? I know Tampa Bay fans are going to be real mad hearing this. I keep putting Mike Evans on other teams, but come on. If y'all wanted to keep him, you would have re-signed him. What does improvement look like? Because if you play your cards right this offseason, Green Bay could realistically be in the Super Bowl next year. That's not very far away for y'all. Minnesota Vikings, a little bit of a two-parter question for y'all. The biggest questions for the Minnesota Vikings to answer this offseason: are we rebuilding? And how do we keep Justin Jefferson happy if we do? Justin Jefferson doesn't strike me as the type of player where you can go, all right, you're the highest paid receiver in the league, and we are going to win 3 games this year. Have fun. Like, For the life of me, I still can't figure out why the Vikings are in such a rush to get rid of Kirk Cousins. You're not going to find better than Kirk Cousins. And I think if you look at their record last year, they were 7-10 and they played 4 different quarterbacks. You're telling me Kirk Cousins isn't worth 3 more wins? But hey, if they do end up going away from him, cool. What does our rebuild look like if we are rebuilding? And we have arguably the best receiver in football on our team. Is he just going to end up being pissed in purgatory on a shitty team like we've done to other star receivers in the past? Moving on to the NFC South, starting with the Atlanta Falcons, how do we make sure our weapons get the ball? Raheem Morris, thank God, in his opening press conference, he was asked how he'd improve the offense, and he just started listing the name of his receivers on his team and Bijan Robinson. And everyone in the media laughed that were at the press conference because they knew what he was talking about. And if you've listened to the first episodes of this podcast, you knew my disdain for Arthur Smith. And he refused to just give people the ball that are good at football because I don't know. But Raheem got the defense, right? Raheem got that. Go look at the Rams defense last year, the results compared to the roster. And you'll be able to tell he can maximize whatever you give him back there. And considering he got Jesse Bates, AJ Tyrell, and Calais Campbell still pretty good at this point in his career, I think he'll be fine. On offense, they got to figure out the quarterback thing. I think they end up with Justin Fields. I don't think it'll end up costing them the number 8 pick in the draft because I don't know who's trading a first-round pick. With all due respect to Justin Fields, I don't know who's trading a number 1 pick for Justin Fields. This is not going to happen. So whether it's Justin Fields or whoever, how do we make sure that all these weapons we got around this quarterback end up getting the ball? Biggest question that the Carolina Panthers have to answer this offseason is, how much of last year was Bryce Young's fault? Yeah, you fired the whole coaching staff around Bryce Young, but if you come to the conclusion at the end of next year like, oh, Bryce Young just doesn't have it, now what? Dave Canales is credited with rehabilitating Geno and Baker Mayfield, but I always think the whole coach rehabilitation thing's a little overrated, and we're just not trying to give these players enough credit for how good they actually are and the situation around them and blah, 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 blah. But sure, you want to give them the credit for that? Sure, why not? If we leave this offseason and then prove the weapons around him, they get him a new offensive line. Well, however much new offensive line they can get him. Coincidentally, the Panthers have cap space. They just don't have any draft capital. So they can sign some free agents. They just can't trade for nobody. So they could bring in some vets. The problem is that's kind of similar to what they did last year, where it's like, all right, we can sign a Miles Sanders. We can sign a Adam Thielen, DJ Chark. And we'll see how that works out for us. See if we can patch some holes. But biggest question the New Orleans Saints have to answer this offseason is the NFL cap limit real? Is cap space real? They have like negative $85 million in cap space. So either they have to cut their entire roster or NFL cap isn't real. I don't know how an NFL team is able to function with literally negative almost $100 million in cap space. I don't know. I don't know. Figure it out. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the biggest question they have to answer this offseason is, how do we not lose our entire roster? The following players are going to need new deals, are going to be unrestricted free agents going into this offseason. Antoine Winfield Jr., Baker Mayfield, Levante David, Devin White, Mike Evans. I feel pretty comfortable in saying those are the 5 best players on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You can only franchise tag one of them. You have to work out deals with the other 4, which means realistically 2 of them are not going to be Bucs next year, if not more. So at least 2 are leaving. Moving on to the NFC West, last division of the segment. Starting with the Arizona Cardinals, how do we upgrade our defense is the biggest question they got to answer this offseason. Jonathan Gannon had the defense playing above their skis last year. There's only but so far that effort can get you, though, if you just don't have the guys, as you saw. As much as we talked about how much the Cardinals are playing above their standard, they still have the number 4 pick in the draft for a reason. Kyler Murray came back and looked like 85% Kyler Murray. This offseason, he'll be able to heal up a little bit more, get a little more familiar with the new offense around him. So I expect him to be a lot better next year. It's a damn near guaranteed they draft Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. So that begs the question, how do we get some guys on our defense so that Jonathan Gannon actually has something to scheme around? And if you don't think Jonathan Gannon is that good of a defensive coach, look at what happened to the Eagles last year. He's a defensive coordinator for Eagles. They set an NFL record in sacks, and they go to the Super Bowl. He leaves, their defense falls apart, and they lose in the wild card round. Los Angeles Rams, the biggest question I have to answer this offseason is, how do we maximize the rest of Matt Stafford's career? Matt Stafford is 36 years old, and I know Tom Brady has warped the way that we see aging quarterbacks. 36 is still old in quarterback years. Very much so, actually. Last year, we thought might have been Matt Stafford's last year, but he ended up balling last year, playing through the back injuries, ended up making the playoffs, looked actually pretty good against the Lions in that last loss of the year. So how do you maximize that last stretch of his career? As good as Puka was as a rookie, I expect him to be even better in year 2. Cooper Kupp still struggled with injuries last year. He'll be even better coming back off another year healthier. What happens with the defense now that Raheem Morris is gone? Pending. The rumor is they're bringing Brandon Staley back. I don't know if that's official yet. I hope to God it isn't. But your window with Matt Stafford is closing and closing quickly. And as far as I know, there's no backup plan or succession plan in place for when Matt Stafford leaves. So you might want to figure that one out. Next, the Seattle Seahawks. The biggest question they have to answer this offseason is, are we rebuilding? You have a coach that's 34. You have a defense that needs to cut some weight to save some cap space. Apparently, there's rumors that Geno Smith might be on the way out. Tyler Lockett might be a cap casualty. So if you're making these changes and you have an inexperienced coach, how competitive are you expecting to be in year one when right now you're the third best team in your division and you're, the eighth best team in your conference? Maybe, possibly, if not lower. So in that case, you might as well go into rebuild mode. Only one problem with that. You have a star wide receiver in DK Metcalf that's not going to be very pleasant if he's not winning a lot of games and putting up numbers. That's not a DK Metcalf thing. That's a every star wide receiver thing. And that's probably not going to go too pleasantly unless John Snyder or the Allen family or Mike McDonald pulls him in before the season starts like, hey, buddy, it's going to be a rough start to the year, but eventually we'll pull this shit together. All right, I saved this team for last for a reason. Last is the San Francisco 49ers, and the question for them is, how much longer is our window open? Now, I keep trying to make this nuanced Brock Purdy point, and no one seems to be understanding me, so I'm going to try this one last time. When I say the 49ers should consider upgrading from Brock Purdy, this is what I mean. Brock Purdy's timeline, as far as becoming a superstar, top-of-the-line quarterback like they just lost to in the Super Bowl, is not the same as the rest of their roster as far as their peaks and their contracts are concerned. Trent Williams is aging. Christian McCaffrey's about to be 30. Deebo Samuel is already struggling with injuries. He's not going to be able to play the crash dummy football the way he plays. I mean that affectionately, by the way. I love watching Deebo play. He's not going to be able to play that way for much longer. Brandon Ayuk is already complaining about his contract in public. The defensive side of the ball already took a step back last year. So how much longer? And that's before we even get into the contract situation. So again, I ask, how much longer do they have to wait for Brock Purdy to become an A+ player? And for y'all that would argue Brock Purdy is an A+ player, if Patrick Mahomes is an A+, nobody else could be an A+. I'm sorry to break that news to y'all. Like, if Patrick Mahomes is an A+, and he's clearly and far away the best quarterback in football, no one else could be an A+, and I could argue no one else could even be an A. Everyone else could be an A- at best. And again, I'll say Brock Purdy's not the reason they did not win a Super Bowl. I'll say it again. Brock Purdy is not the reason that the 49ers lost the Super Bowl. But the reason the Chiefs were able to win the Super Bowl is, hey, we played awfully this whole game, but we need 2 big drives, and we got 15, who's the best quarterback in football, and he's going to go get him. Brock Purdy had his chance to make his 2 drives to put the game away. He left with a field goal. I don't know what more, and that's not like he's throwing an interception to lose the game. He did not lose them the game, but the superstar, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, left with a touchdown. He left with a field goal. That's the difference. Again, I know no one's going to hear the nuance in that take, and they're just going to be like, you said Brock Purdy sucks. Look at his numbers, MVP. But hey, bro, if you don't get it at that point, I don't know what to tell you. It's not an indictment on him. He's a good player. But again, we just saw you need an A++ quarterback to win the Super Bowl. And he's not that. Oh, yeah, before I end this segment, I didn't talk about the Kyle Shanahan overtime decision because I did my podcast immediately after the Super Bowl. And I didn't watch his press conference explaining it. And I didn't think about it in the moment as I was watching because I just assumed the reason was our defense just got gashed on an 85-yard drive to give up the game-tying field goal. I'm not going to put him back out there. That's what I assumed the reason was. Until Kyle Shanahan in his press conference just flat out said, no, that's not the reason. Our analytics guy said it'll be better if we have the ball third because if we score, then they score, then we'll have a chance to score again. And people have been rehashing this decision pretty much since the Super Bowl ended. But I haven't heard anyone bring this point up yet. Here's the reason why that decision makes even less sense now than it did then. That decision is based on the assumption that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to score, which Good assumption, because Patrick Mahomes is their quarterback, right? Assuming they're going to score is a pretty safe bet. So since we're already moving on the assumption that they're going to score, wouldn't you want the ball second so that you have the chance to match or surpass whatever score they end up getting? Or even better, since you took the ball first, shouldn't you want to make sure that you get a touchdown, because getting a field goal is essentially giving the game away? Like, if you're moving with the assumption that they're going to score a touchdown, why are you kicking a field goal inside the 10-yard line? Again, one decision doesn't ruin an entire game. A lot of shit had to go wrong for them to end up in that situation in the first place. But that's where Kyle Shanahan having way too big of a brain ends up biting him in the ass, because that was way too smart, thinking too much. Nah, dog, sometimes you gotta be a Neanderthal. Even beyond the Neanderthal thing, if you want to go the math route, in Kyle Shanahan's example, his offense has to go down the field and score 2 touchdowns. In my example, they only got to score 1. or they can go for 2-point conversion and win that way, which is what the Kansas City Chiefs said that they were going to do. The other glaring indictment, which is when every other player on the 49ers say, yeah, I wasn't even aware of the new overtime rules, which, if that doesn't perfectly explain the Kyle Shanahan coaching conundrum, I don't know what does. We have all these schemes. We have all these great players. We got all these schematics, but we don't even know what the overtime rules are. That's it. The game management piece is what's missing with Kyle Shanahan's career, which is why when they fired Steve Wilkes, which I won't rehash here, that's been beaten to death. Honestly, I would have reached out to Bill Belichick to be the defense coordinator. Me personally, because outside of fixing my defense, there's never been a better person at game management and coaching than Bill Belichick, which is the one thing Kyle struggles with. You have this one glaring flaw, and there is a person right now that is unemployed that is better at this flaw you have than anyone else in NFL history. And y'all didn't even make the call. I don't know, man. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll talk about the Kansas City parade shooting. All right, and we're back. As we go through the offseason of the NFL, I'm still trying to figure out where I want to put the more political topics in the podcast, whether at the beginning or at the end, because they're going to happen. But I don't know where the placement will be. This just so happens to intersect perfectly between politics and football, so I could have put it whatever. But I chose to put this at the end because it's really a downer, because I have the most dystopian view of the gun control argument in the United States, because I think it's a lost cause. And there's a tweet by Dan Hodges from 2015 that I'm going to read to y'all real quick. He said, in retrospect, Sandy Hook marked the end of the U.S. gun control debate. Once America decided killing children was bearable, it was over. That's kind of how I felt the entire time. I was 15 when Sandy Hook happened. And if that wasn't enough to get some common sense gun control laws and to be like, hey, maybe we should do something about this. The amount of gun deaths and mass shootings we've had since Sandy Hook has tripled, specifically in children, because lawmakers and people that want to fight for gun rights have long since decided that a piece of paper written by slave owners is more important than the lives of children. And that's not something they're going to move off of. However, we can take small steps towards change. Specifically the Kansas City, Missouri shooting for the Super Bowl parade for the Kansas City Chiefs, which another tweet I saw was, mass shooting at Super Bowl parade is the most depressingly American headline you'll ever read. And it's, yeah, I don't really know anybody to summarize the event than that. Like, there's nothing more American than a mass shooting in football parade. Like, it's sad reality, but that is what it is. So in 2021, the governor of Missouri, Mike Parson, signed the Second Amendment Preservation Act that prohibited local law enforcement from enforcing of federal firearms laws that basically wanted gun registration, background checks, assault weapons bans, etc., etc. He even went down to the Supreme Court to petition against these federal arms laws because the Supreme Court wanted to block him from being able to pass this law in his state, right? The police recovered multiple weapons from the mass shooting at the parade. Some of those weapons were on that list of guns that would have been banned if he would not have passed that law. This blood is on the hands of Mike Parson, and he will be on the ballot this November. Another person who will be on the ballot this November is House Speaker Dean Polcher, Polcher. I want to make sure that the people of Missouri know the name so they know who to look for come November. When asked about the KC parade shooting, he had some interesting comments. I'll play the clip. I'll let y'all hear it for yourselves.
Missouri law prevents local cities, municipalities from enacting stricter gun regulations. Why?
Yeah, we're moving on. I already addressed that. We're going to address that, but we're not going to dwell on Kansas City today. We're going to be very proud of Representative Roberts and his bill. Laws alone don't solve the problem. Our thoughts and prayers. I would like you guys to focus on actually what we're accomplishing for the state of Missouri. Is we've had a great week delivering for Missourians yet again. We're not going to dwell on Kansas City today. Our thoughts and prayers.
Why should Kansas City not
We're
be
done
doing
here.
that?
Thanks.
So in the face of children that at that point were still healing from gunshot wounds in the hospital, and a mother that had died from these gunshot wounds, he was like, we're not going to dwell on that. We're moving on. I know we're not crazy about these two presidential candidates for November. Lord knows I'm not. But this is why elections are important. These two people, elected officials, one of which is Mike Parson, who his actions directly affected having those weapons on the streets and affected the lives of those people that day. The other one, Dean Polcher, who was completely dismissive of the fact that the citizens that he was sworn in to serve were harmed, and the people of Missouri have the chance to vote them out in November. And if you have even a mustard seed sized amount of a soul, you get them the fuck up out of there. We may not be able to pass common sense gun laws, and hell, you might not even agree on common sense gun laws. This ain't even really about that right now. We can do that though. We can say, hey, you aren't helping the problem. Whether you agree on a solution or not, whatever side, left, right, you end up leaning on, whatever, discussion for another day. Because, again, that's a dead end that I don't feel like having with people. But you can look at those two people in November when you go to the ballot and you say, not them, y'all got to go. Click them off. That's why elections are important. Fuck the president. The local stuff affects you directly. All right, now I got to get to my problem with the NFL. This one's a little more on my heart. So after the shooting, every NFL social media account tweeted out their statements and graphics and, thoughts and prayers. And here's a sad picture of the events and a person praying and blah, blah, blah. You know, the usual thing they do instead of actual action. And I got asked, what would you want the owners to do? It's not like they can pass laws. And instead of me getting angry at this person, I decided to come up with an actual solution. So one of the main opponents of common sense gun laws are NRA donations to political campaigns. The NRA donates to presidents, senators, mayors, representatives, congressmen, congresswomen, whoever, so that they can uphold laws that keep the Second Amendment protected, keeps them profitable, and keeps guns on the street that take the lives of children. So yes, they pay money and profit from the deaths of children. According to OpenSecrets.org, estimates that between 1998 and 2022, NRA spent about $190.4 million on lobbying efforts compared to only $28.9 million by gun control groups. So the NRA, over the course of 24 years, spent about $7.9 million a year. Overall, right? This is why I bring it back to the NFL owners. NFL owners on average are worth $8.5 billion. So literally 1,000 times more. And per year, the NRA spends between the yearly salary of a strong safety and a right tackle. Right tackles are about 7.7 million. Strong safeties are about 8.4. So right in the middle of there. So between 32 NFL owners, for the price of Lane Johnson, y'all could get some gun laws passed. But instead, thoughts and prayers. Here's a graphic. Here's a statement. Here's a quote. That's my problem. And in summary, that's kind of the problem, the whole gun control problem in America. The people who actually could affect change, who are in positions of power to change this problem, to help this problem, won't do it because they don't want to. Don't listen to any other reason. That's really all it comes down to. All this other English that they end up telling you, oh, it's because of this barricade and that barricade. Fuck that. What billionaire you know can't get something they want done if they want it done bad enough? Keeping American children alive are just not high on their priority list, which is why they're not doing it. No matter how you slice it, that's why these mass shootings are going to continue to happen in America, because the people who could change it don't want to. And now y'all see why I saved this segment till the end, because God damn it, America's a fucking shit show in a dystopian society that we're just going to continue to, every couple weeks to a month, get a story about children getting shot, have the same conversation, thoughts and prayers, argue on all the sites, and then some other big headline will happen and we're going to pretend like it's going to move on. Life as usual. Thanks for listening to Kev BKA Beloved Show. Catch y'all next week.